Welcome back to Lindsey Unfiltered. We are back with the third installment of Quiet on Set. Gone through episode 1, which covered the foundation for what Nickelodeon's cast looked like at the time, introducing some key players like Dan Schneider and Amanda Bynes and some of the other cast members on all that, and how a toxic work environment soon came to be. Long work hours, sketches that were inappropriate for kids, and just all around things that weren't so normal when you looked at it from an adult point of view. Now, kids might have looked at these things and thought it was okay, but adults, when you look at it from a magnifying glass, it's not really what it seemed, okay? Then we go into the second episode and we start talking more about production assistant Jason Handy and how he was arrested for having lots and lots and lots of material related to children, emailing children on the sets of the Amanda Show, working very closely to children, getting children to trust him in order to basically abuse them. Handy was sentenced to 6 years in prison, and now he's out living his life. I'm sure he has registered as a sex offender, but for all that he did, the tens of thousands of pictures and videos, and children that won't ever get that piece of their childhood back. I mean, let's just, how do you even begin to heal from that, you know? Personally, I went through some traumatic things within the past week, dealing with a lot of law enforcement and dealing with a lot of violence, not me, but an individual in the area. Just a very, very, very traumatic event, lots of trauma. Okay, so I can look at things, a little bit differently and like start to say, wow, maybe we should look at everybody in the situation, not just one person. Look at everybody that this could have affected, not just the people that were directly involved in it, but people that are on the outskirts receive the blowback from this as well, because you never know what affects someone or how someone will react to a certain thing. So Brandy, that young girl that was touched, I apologize, that was sent those harassing emails by Jason Handy. They said that nobody ever apologized to her. I want to apologize to you because that must have been traumatic to live through. I want to apologize to you. You might not ever see this, but I want to apologize to you, and I'm sorry that that happened. So we go through that, and then we go through bringing up Brian Peck and his characteristics. He's great around kids. He's a pickle guy. I've seen him on TV. I've seen his name everywhere. He's well respected in Hollywood. He's a dialogue coach. He works with children. He's worked with Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the greatest actors to ever grace the screen. So basically, they end the second episode by saying Brian Peck is arrested for child sexual abuse on a child actor, and it's no longer going to be a part of the All That family, and then nobody knows anything. They end that episode with Drake Bell coming to sit down in a chair. So I know it's not Drake Bell. I know it's not Drake Bell because I've never ever heard of Drake Bell being abused. I've never heard of anything like that in my natural born life. So we're like, I know it's not him. Like, this is where this documentary garnered my attention in the first place when I started Drake Bell sitting down, because I'm like, I know there's no way. So season 1, episode 3 gives us a deep dive into Drake's story. I will briefly explain my relationship with Drake and Josh, okay? Drake and Josh was that show that every kid loved. Every kid loved to watch Drake and Josh, right? The next show for Dan Schneider in 2004, the Hug Me Brother, and we had the cool brother, which was Drake, and we had the dorky brother, which was Josh. And I always remember Drake making his character was also named Drake. So, but he made his character seem so confident and, very successful. So while his character was very confident and very successful, we didn't know what he was truly dealing with deep down below. Like I was like, and he was a musician on the show, he was a musician in real life. So it mirrored a lot of who he really was. And I was like, this dude is so cool. Like me, myself, like I don't remember the age I was in 2004, 20 years ago. I was 8. But I grew up a little bit. I had to be 10 or 12, like when I was really actually understanding and loving the show. Brian Peck and Drake Bell met around 2000. And that's when Brian Peck was hired to Nickelodeon and Nickelodeon on Sunset as a dialogue coach. And he has Drake come to his house to get acting lessons. He works with all the kids, but he takes a special liking to Drake. Drake's dad basically did everything he could for Drake growing up. Drake's father and mother divorced. They didn't have a good relationship. They broke off their marriage. And basically, the father was looking for something to do with Drake, and he got him into acting really young, really, really young. And that was his thing, to be his son's agent, to get his son jobs. And when he got Drake with Nick, he would see Brian Peck hanging around Drake a little bit too much. Every time Drake comes around the corner, there's Brian. Every time. And his son is young. His son is 12, 13, 14 years old. So he's touching his arm in front of people. It's nothing inappropriate, but parents know. Parents can see what we can't see. You know what I'm saying? So his parent is like, you're just touching my son too much. You're popping out of corners that my son's just popped her out of. And my son's just a kid. He doesn't know any better. So can you just stay away from my kid? He raised concerns to Nickelodeon. I'm assuming to HR about this, and they were basically like, "You're just a homophobe. Brian Peck's gay. He's great, and you're a homophobe." I'm sorry, gay or not, you shouldn't be touching children. What does him being gay have to do with him touching a minor? You're calling him a homophobe because he doesn't like him around his son in that manner. So, of course, as groomers do, Brian suggested Drake shouldn't have his dad as a manager. And here's the thing. Here is the thing. If you're a coworker, right? There's no way you should be getting in between family affairs. You're an adult coworker at that. You should not be getting in between family affairs. You should not be trying to drive a wedge between your minor, that's a big word here, minor coworker and their adult agent, their parent at that. Who do you think has Drake Bell's best interest at heart? His father that's been doing this with him since he's been 4? Or Brian Peck? Remember, the last name's Peck. You're driving a wedge between him and the man who's known every inch about this business and him since the day he was born. Yeah. So Drake Bell is a little musician. I don't know why. I know you see somehow the world could change for me and be so wonderful. That's not Drake Bell. I don't know, but it all coagulates into a big Nick goo for me. It's all for real. I'm telling you just how I feel. So y'all know what I'm talking about. But Drake is a musician and he wants to do music on the side of his acting, and Brian is going to all his rock band shows. Like front row screaming like a fangirl. Oh my God. Trey! Mind you, this boy is 14 and he's 40 something. Trey! Every single show. Okay. And then to top that off, Drake has his 15th birthday party at Bryant's house with all of his castmates. Oh, that's so sweet. Brian, you're not his daddy. You're not his daddy. His daddy could have rented him a venue if he wanted his cast members to come to his party, which is normal. You want your coworkers at your party, they're your friends. He had money. His daddy could have rented him a venue. He could have rented himself a venue. Why did it need to be at your house? Why did you need to have control of the narrative? All right, Brian is just still like, he's taking that hammer and that wedge and just pop, 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 drawing it as deep as he can. And he's done it, saying his dad's taking all his money. Mind you, how does he know about Drake's money? As a dialogue coach, how do you know about his check? How do you know about his finances? How do you know? How do you know what his dad is doing with his money? How do you know what his accountants and his taxes are doing? Unless Drake is telling you that. Like, how do you know? So Drake begins avoiding his dad. He's like, I'm a teen, I'm a kid. Just like Amanda. You see the similarities? Dan and Amanda. Basically, Amanda wanted to date boys. And Dan was like, yeah, your parents are just on bullshit. You're a star. Fuck them. Get divorced. Fuck them. You write the checks. And here we have Brian on the opposite side of the same coin, telling Drake, your dad just wants your money, bro. You're making this money. You just want your dad following you around everywhere? How you gonna get girls like that? Right? You guys understand where I'm coming from? You guys get where I'm coming from? How you gonna get girls or your dad right behind your shoulder, man? They just want your money. When the fact of the matter is, Drake Bell wouldn't be who he is without Joe Bell. If it wasn't for Joe Bell's dedication, if it wasn't for Joe Bell's sacrifices, there would be no Drake Bell. So Brian also gets to the mother, and she already knows, oh, they're divorced, so I can really hammer this home and attack Joe because I know he doesn't like me around his kid. He tells that bullshit to the mother as well. And Drake ends up firing his dad as his manager.
The situation with Brian, this had all been building up. And so my dad started making it very difficult for Brian to be around me. I think Brian got a sense that my dad was on the watch. And so he started to really drive a wedge between my dad and me. He started talking about how my dad's stealing my money. Nobody likes that my dad's on set. He's a real problem. So he just started making me believe that he was horrible for my career. I wasn't going to be able to move forward with him in it. And coming from someone like Brian, I was believing it because he's been in this business for so long and he must know more than us. Also because I was spending so much time more so around him than I was really my dad.
I think Drake was so distraught over everything that he avoided me, which is understandable. He was under a lot of, I don't want my dad to be my manager, I feel guilty about that.
And my mom and my dad had a very tumultuous relationship. They did not get along, and I think Brian saw that. So Brian really started getting into my mom's mind and telling her the same things he was telling me.
So basically what happens? Brian says, look, this is the way it needs to be. He slides his slithery ass in there and plays the role of manager to Drake. Bell said he told Drake's mom, whatever you do, don't leave him alone with Brian Peck. Whatever you do, don't leave him alone with Brian Peck. Whatever you do, don't leave him alone with Brian Peck. And what did she do? Can you guys take a guess at what Drake's mom did? Not victim blaming by any chance. Not victim blaming by any chance, because she should have been able to do that around a responsible adult. But she left him alone around Brian Peck, guys. Brian slid into the role of Drake's manager after Joe had left and began sleeping at Brian's house at 15 years old. Now, this is the same guy who's pen pals with John Wayne Gacy, a pedophile serial killer. Pen pals. Normal pen pals. Your son's... Maybe she missed that part. I don't know. Maybe she missed that part. Okay, so Drake's sitting here and he's telling us his story. One day, Drake Bell wakes up to being assaulted by Brian Peck sexually. He was 15 years old.
I was sleeping on the couch where I would usually sleep, and I woke up to him. I just opened my eyes, I woke up, and he was sexually assaulting me. Elaborate on that on camera, really.
Whatever you feel comfortable or you think would help.
Why don't you do this?
Yeah.
Why don't you think of the worst stuff that someone could do to somebody as a sexual assault, and that'll answer your question.
Drake goes on to say it happened several times and in a brutal manner. I'm suggesting several different ways, several different times, and that Brian Peck had no remorse for what he'd done. Just not giving a shit, really. It ended up with a lot of PTSD for Drake, and it led to a lot of self-loathing, self-medicating, drugs, drinking, and Brian Peck had just begun. He was going to try to use and abuse Drake as much as he could. Thankfully, an adult caught on to the abuse, and it was actually one of his girlfriend's mother. Brian had made plans with Drake to go to Disneyland, and he was blowing up his phone, and the mother of the girlfriend, while Drake was at his girlfriend's house, said, "That's kind of weird that this older guy is just constantly calling you. And when you tell him you don't want to be bothered, he's still constantly calling you." So they got Drake into therapy. Nothing came out. And then just one day, Drake exploded and told his mom what had happened. And I want to make a note to basically say that the kid we saw on TV, this happy, confident guy, the Drake character on Drake and Josh, it was the exact opposite of who he was inside. So he's an amazing actor. To know that that's what he was going through in that time of his life, no one would have ever guessed. He seemed so confident. He seemed so happy. And that's not to say he wasn't happy, but it just made it seem like you'd never think this was going on. Years later, I was always like, Drake Bell fell off. Drake Bell kind of fell off. He never did anything with acting like he did in his childhood, and I never knew why. And I'm like, there's always a far off look in Drake's eyes, and when he does his music, he's a little sad, but I never understood why, and now I do. Nickelodeon didn't take the right precautions to protect Drake Bell, to protect the girl that I was speaking about earlier, and you have incidents like that. So, towards the end of the episode, they were talking to Drake about, what did you expect would happen? Of course, the police were called after Drake confessed, and Drake had to get Brian to confess what he did to Drake.
The investigation was pretty brutal. I had to be excruciatingly detailed about every single thing, time that it had happened, with two absolute strangers. The worst part was I had to make a phone call to Brian and get him to admit what he'd done. He answers, so I said, I'm really struggling with this stuff now, and I'm so torn up, I'm so broken, I can't, I'm so emotionally distressed right now, and why did this happen? He just started a full-on confession, and then he kept asking me over and over again. He's like, "Are we being recorded?" It was just all these mixed emotions of thank God, finally, this gets handled, and finally something happens to this person.
After that confession, he's going to jail. He's going to jail. From what we know, it was only one victim, but the manner in which the abuse was carried out, we would think there was a lot of time in jail, things of that nature. But Drake ends this episode saying, it's not what we expected. Fate of Brian Peck is nothing like what we expected. And that's what's going to lead us into episode 4. I'll be glad to review. I have watched maybe 15 minutes into episode 4. I'm trying to break them down. Some episodes I've rewatched. And a heck of a week. Make sure you guys go and check out my Instagram. It's LindseyUnfilteredd. I'm on TikTok. I may go live on TikTok. I'm kind of debating that. I got my live rights. I did want to tell you guys about another venture that we will be doing after we wrap up this series. We will be doing an A to Z American Scandal series, which means we will pick some of the most notorious American scandals in American history. What book is that? Oh, this is my AP government book. Oh, I thought it was AP history, but it's not. This is AP government. This is from high school, guys. God, I'm planning on clearing this shelf off. I may not. There's a lot of old books, old literature. But speaking of government, guys, I want to do like the top scandals in American government, A to Z. So A would be a scandal that starts with an A, so on and so forth. So if you guys have any ideas for the letters, drop them down below. I already have A picked out. So if you guys want to choose B to Z, let me know and I will do the research. Those videos are going to take a little bit longer, maybe. I don't know, because I have to basically do my due diligence as far as research goes, format a script, and I want to put out a really decent piece of work, maybe a 20 to 30-minute video detailing an A to Z. So the channel will probably be built on that content for the next couple of months. So that's our next project. I wanted to start it off here because I feel like this is a good documentary that we needed to see. So if there are any other documentaries that you guys want me to do a deep dive into, I'm a documentary buff, so I love those. And with me getting ready to create my own, I definitely need as much research as I can get, guys. Thank you so much for listening in. Guys, if you could like, comment, subscribe, share, I'd appreciate it. Follow me on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter. I'm working on that as well. Guys, I'd love to chit chat with you. So stay engaged and make sure to share. I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a brilliant and unfiltered rest of your day. See you guys.
I shine so bright, you might go blind.